So, let's talk to our Elohim, and we'll take a look at the whole thing, the entire Torah, in a few lines out of Bereshit chapter 1. So, thank you, Father, for this opportunity to look at your word. And we ask that you'll open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word says. And we thank you in the name of Yahushua. Amen. So, what was the goal in creation? Now, what was the goal in creating the atom? To build a relationship. Elohim is spirit, okay? Yahuwah Elohim is spirit. And just by the name itself, it is something. We'll get away from this idea of calling him he or calling him she or whatever. Yahuwah Elohim is something that permeates everything. Okay, something we can't fathom. And as something that permeates everything, we would say that Elohim is perhaps incapable of feeling something on a physical level. Okay. Until you put something on a physical level to open the door for that feeling to come through. All right. What did Yahuwah Elohim need or want? Not that he needed anything. He didn't need anything when you basically permeate everything and you are everything. He needed to be able to feel on a different level, on a physical level. And you've created this universe, you've created everything, and part of everything that you've created is physical. So now I need to get in touch with the physical aspects of what I've created. So how does he do that? He creates one perfect place. Okay? And if you have ever considered the apologetics concerning the earth, you'll find that everything is absolutely perfectly balanced. From the amount of hydrogen that reaches us from the sun, to the conversion of that hydrogen to helium, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, the placement of the earth is exactly where it's supposed to be. The moon is exactly where it's supposed to be. Any closer, we would die. Any farther away, we would die. Any closer to the sun, we would die. Any farther away from the sun, we would die. 0.00, I'll just throw a number out there, 0.0004%, let's say helium, okay? 0.0005%, we all die. 0.0003%, we all die. So it's a perfectly balanced planet. And then he creates, in order, everything that humankind would need to survive. He creates energy, he creates the atmosphere, he creates the oceans, he creates the land, he creates the trees and the shrubs and the plants to provide oxygen and to filter out carbon dioxide. He creates fish, he creates animals, and finally he creates humankind. But humankind, he creates on the sixth day, on the same day that he creates Behemah, the same day that he creates the cattle. Behemah is a quadruped that has no sense. So he needs to create something higher than Behemah and higher than the human beings that he's created. So he plants a garden eastward in Eden, and there on the eighth day he creates Ha'adam, the atom, okay? And then he splits the atom into Ish and Isha. Why? Because now he's created something that can minister to the people of the land. The people of the land can come to a knowledge of Yahuwah, and as a result, Yahuwah can have exactly what he wanted to accomplish, is a relationship with something physical. So what do we see in this picture? Okay? That's the Peshat version. Okay? But there's always the lower levels. There's Remes and Deresh. Okay? Do we see the entire story of the nation of Israel in the creation of the Adam? Okay? From a Remes Deresh point of view, yes. What do we see? We see a single entity being created with the purpose of ministering to the people of the land. It's created on the 8th day. Okay? First 6 days, he makes creation. He creates the people of the land. Then he rests on the 7th day. This is in chapter 2 of Bereshis. Then he says that these are the generations on the day that he created the earth and the heavens. The only time it says earth and heavens in the Torah is when he creates the Adam. And he places the Adam in Eden, and then he divides the Adam. What do you see? You have the creation of the nation of Israel that came from Abraham. It's created, there are 12 tribes. You have a governing system. What do the tribes do? They split. Okay? So now we have an Adam that has split into 2 parts. What has happened in the rift? And what happens in the rift now becomes the lesson from the Torah for us to understand what happened to them so that it doesn't happen to us again. Okay? So, all that being said, everybody with me so far?
Okay, you said the split was Israel and
okay.
the rest of humanity?
So we have Israel. Okay? Israel comes from the exalted Father.
Adam or Eve?
Okay? The Adam represents the whole of Israel.
Whole of Israel.
Okay? The whole of Israel splits into 2 houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Within the garden, the Adam is split into Ish and Isha, 2 totally separate entities that must work together as one in order to bring what is needed to the people of the land. Okay? Ezekiel tells us we have to have a prince in order to minister to the people of the land. That's we'll examine that again hopefully sometime as we move into the future. I just thought it was an interesting analogy. But anyway, so what happened? What happened in chapter 3? All right, to get an understanding, we have to understand what's going on in chapter 2 first. So he creates the Adam, puts Adam, before he splits Adam in 2, he gives him this, okay? He gives him this. Chapter 2, verse 16. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the Adam. Isn't that an interesting thing? Yahuwah Elohim gave commandments to the Adam. Did Yahuwah Elohim give commandments to Israel? He gave them commandments at Sinai, which is something that's very important for us to understand. Okay, then it says, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. All right? But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for in the day that you do eat of it you shall surely die. Then Yahuwah Elohim says, it is not good that the Adam should be alone. I will make a help comparable to him, meet for him. Okay. So what has Elohim just done? He's basically given Adam, okay? Now I say Adam, I'm not talking about the first guy because they haven't been split in 2 yet. He's talking to the whole of humanity that's within Eden. Everybody with me? And he's given them 2 commandments. So this gives them 4 commandments, all in all. He placed the man in the garden to tend it and keep it. He brought the animals to the Adam for him to name them. And now he gives them 2 commandments. Eat from the tree of life. Don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. How many commandments is that? 4. 4. Okay. And what is 4? The door. But 4 is also a representation of spiritual poverty. So, Okay, you have the door. It represents the doorway to enter into the presence of Elohim, but it also represents a doorway to rebellion and to enter into spiritual poverty. Okay? He's been given rules. He has to follow rules, albeit they're not very difficult rules to follow. I mean, you tell me, okay, look, I'm going to put you in this garden. All you have to do is take care of the garden. Get up in the morning, do a little gardening. All you have to do is give names to the animals in the garden and maybe get along with them. And here's this tree that I'm giving you. It's in the middle of the garden that you can eat from it and you'll never die. But this tree over here will open your eyes in a different way. It's a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat from it, because if you do eat from it, you will moot. Does it mean that you'll necessarily die physically? Or moot also means to die prematurely from a lack of ethics, from a lack of morals. Okay? So, he hasn't been split in two. Do we have to be split in two? Does the atom have to be split in two? And by proxy, do we have to be two parts? Because we're a physical part and we're a spiritual part. Okay? It says, in 18, it says, and Yahuwah said, it is not good that the atom should be alone. I will make him a help for him. Okay? Did Adam need a companion, or because he was all alone? Did Adam realize he was all alone? He didn't realize he was all alone. Who was alone? Who needed fellowship? What was the purpose of creation? Yeah. Elohim needed fellowship. It is not right for the Adam should be alone. He can't know me. He needs to be able to know me. So I will make a way for him to know me. So what does he do? Okay? Then it talks out of the ground he formed every beast of the field and blah, blah, blah. And then he gave him to Adam to give him the name. And then in 22 it says, 21 it says, and Yahuwah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon the Adam. And as he slept, he took one of his, and we all read the story, ribs. Men and women have the same amount of ribs in their body. Okay? Guys aren't lacking a rib, because the word there should actually say side. He split the Adam into two parts. Okay? He split them into two parts. He took and he separated the physical part from the spiritual part. Okay? So that they would recognize each other. Okay? He formed Isha, and he brought her to the Adam. And then in 23, this is the formula to how the relationship between us and Elohim actually works. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called Isha because she was taken out of Ish. So again, in the Torah, throughout the Bible, masculine aspects refer to physical aspects of worship. When you read about a masculine aspect of something, it's the physical aspect of worship. It's prayer. It's study. It's even praise. When you talk about Isha, the feminine aspect in the Torah, it's dealing with spiritual things. Yahuwah Elohim. You have a feminine name in Yahuwah, and Elohim is a feminine plural. Does it mean that God is a woman? What it's telling us is that Yahuwah Elohim is a spirit. It's a spiritual aspect. In order for us to be able to worship the Father, we have to worship Him strictly according to the doctrines of whatever church we're going to, because it doesn't make a difference. Oh, wait, no? What does the Scripture say? Those who worship the Father must worship Him how? In spirit and in truth, okay? Two aspects. We have to be able to worship Him spiritually, but we have to worship Him truthfully. How do we worship Him truthfully? According to what the Word actually says. How do we know what the word actually says? We read it. It's reading, is picking up the Torah and putting it on your desk and physically looking at it. Is that a physical or a spiritual act? It's a physical act. Okay? This is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. This is part of me, part of who I am. But she will be called Isha. It'll be called the Spirit because it comes from Ish. The Spirit comes from my ability to sit down and read it, analyze it, understand it, and apply it. Can I be wrong? Yes, because we have chapter 3 that we have to contend with. Okay? All right. So, well, verse 25 says, and they were both naked, the Adam and his Isha were not ashamed. At this point, the man and the woman were not ashamed. Physical study, the spirit that comes from that study is not ashamed because it's still totally and completely exposed to Elohim. They were naked. They weren't afraid until we get to chapter 3. Now, recall in chapter 2 and 16 and 17 that Elohim has said, from every tree of the garden you may freely eat. It's the tree of life. It's in the midst of the garden. But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, don't eat from it, because on the day that you do, you will surely die. All right? So, verse 1 of chapter 3, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. Why does it say that the serpent was more subtle than any behemah of the field that Elohim had made? Why does he compare that? That's the first comparison that we get. Okay? Because something in the serpent is going to bring around a spiritual poverty. But we consider the serpent as what? What are we looking at when we look at the serpent to start with? If we remember our Hebrew letters. Okay? We have a letter tet. The choice in tet is that I can continue to submit myself, bow before Elohim according to his word, have a relationship with my Elohim according to his word, or I can crawl on my belly like the Nachash and eat the dust of the field, which is the curse that's put on the serpent down the road. I can yield to the enticements of the Satan. Okay? Now again, the enticements of the Satan. Does that mean a little red guy with a pitchfork poking us and saying, do this? No. Shittim is a root of the word Satan, or Satan is a root of the word Shittim. Shittim simply means emotions that are not under control. Anger, hostility, this and that. Okay? So, what is it that is now going to speak to Isha? Is it a serpent puppet that's controlled by some dude named Satan? Or is she going to start looking things from an emotional point of view? Just because they're created in a perfect setting doesn't mean that they're not going to look at things from a different point of view. All right? And the snake...
Just an evil inclination or evil inclination?
You could call it the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara. We all have the Yetzer Hara. We all have Yetzer Tov. We all have two inclinations. You know, I always say that one can't survive without a smidgen of both. If we were completely good, we wouldn't be able to survive in this world. If we were completely evil, we would be in Huntsville. You have to find the balance. Okay? But what has he said? Is it what Elohim has said? You shall not eat of any tree of the garden. Okay. What does that question actually mean? He says, has Yahuwah Elohim said, literally, has Yahuwah Elohim said that there is a tree in the garden you're not supposed to eat from? Serpent's asking a very simple question. Not lying, not deceiving. Has Elohim said that there's a tree in the garden you're not supposed to eat from? It's a straightforward question. Does she understand the question? Because it goes here, and the woman said to the serpent, of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat. She didn't understand the question, and she responded weakly. Okay? Because what did Elohim said? What did Elohim say? Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. Okay? So she's not giving back the whole response. But then she says this, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. What tree is in the midst of the garden? Tree of life. Tells us. In the midst of the garden is the tree of life. She's saying that we can't eat from the tree of life because if we eat from it or touch it. Did Elohim say anything about touching it? No, he simply said eat it. Now, if you read the book of Jubilees, the commandment is don't eat from it, don't touch it. But we're looking at Bereshis because Bereshis is teaching us something specific. Is the serpent dealing with the woman, or is she dealing with a combination of the woman and the man? Is the serpent dealing strictly with Isha, or is he dealing with Ish and Isha together in this particular verse? Just Isha. Okay, so what happens when something starts to play on your emotions without your desire or your ability to substantiate that by searching for the facts? Okay, can you go on memory? You can, but is it necessarily a good idea to go on memory? Yeah, not for me. I can't remember 10 minutes ago. Okay, so, and the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die. Okay, so what is happening in Isha's mind? She's now convincing herself that she won't die if she goes contrary to something that Yahuwah Elohim has told her to do, because she is manipulating the facts to make it okay. I'm sure that none of us have ever done that. Right? At least not in the last hour. Okay. So, for Elohim does know that in the day that you eat of it, even your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as Elohim, knowing good from evil. So, we've answered this question before, but it's worth exploring. Did they die on the day that they ate from it?
Well, the beginning.
Physically, in our world today, how long is a day? 24 hours? They didn't die within 24 hours. We read in the genealogy that Adam was 930 years old. But if Ish gets involved, Ish would tell us to look at another source to find out exactly what a day was, and so that we would be more informed. And we would probably, if we were hanging out in Ish land, we would probably look at something like the book of Jubilees. It tells us that a day was comparable to 1,000 years. And if Adam was 930 years old when he died, did he die on the day that he ate from it? Yes, he did. If a day's 1,000 years, he's only 930 years old. He died on the day that he ate from it. How many years short of 1,000 years? If he's 930 and a day's 1,000 years? 70, which is ayin. Okay? He was short of this letter. That means eye. His eyes were what? For Elohim does know that in the day you eat of it, even your eyes shall be opened. You will not surely die. Your eyes will be opened. It changed his perception. And because it changed his perception, we'll find out what his perception was changed to. It also changed his relationship with Yahuwah Elohim. It can happen to us in the blink of an eye. Haha, no pun intended. Okay? And then it says in 6, and when Isha saw that the tree was good for food, and it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit of it, and she did eat. Okay, so here we go we have a spiritual aspect of us. Our emotion is now driving us. And what does the emotion say? I can have all this stuff, and it's going to make me stronger. It's going to make me smarter. I'm going to talk myself into it. The emotion is driving the way now. And it says, she took from it, she ate from it, and she gave it to her husband with her, and he did eat. So, what is this now? If the scripture said she shall be called Isha because she was taken out of Ish, we have a role reversal because this is now Isha, and Ish is going to be taken out of Isha. Can this possibly be? Can I allow my emotional state of being to dictate what my physical state of being can and cannot do? We do it all the time. Is it necessarily a good thing? Go with your heart. And sometimes it's a good idea to go with your heart because your head has a tendency to overthink things. But what if your head and your heart are cooperating and you're thinking things through and you're feeding the information to your heart, and your heart is saying, okay, well, we can compromise on that. We won't buy this now because it's too expensive, but can we get it later? And the head sits down and he calculates and he makes a budget and says to the heart, yes, I can. Can I sit down with my wife who wants a stackable washer and dryer, $1,400 at Lowe's? Okay, I don't have $1,400 right now. Winter's coming. I need to finish the fireplace, put the heater in the fireplace so we'll heat up the house. I need to make sure that we're caught up. I get a bonus in December. If I take that bonus and save a little bit of money to add to it, in December, I can buy the stackable. In the meantime, I've got all the stuff. Let's just build the laundry room and get it ready, and then we can just put it in there. And what does Trina say? Good plan. Why? She told me what the desire of her heart was. I looked at the desire of the heart. Now, if I didn't have Ish on my side, what would I do? I would take money that I don't have, and I would go and I would immediately buy this washer and dryer and watch everything else around us sink. We could huddle around the dryer in the winter and turn it on and hope that it heats us up enough, right? If Ish and Isha are not in balance, you have a problem. If Isha leads Ish, you have a problem. Did Isha lead Ish with Rehoboam when he had the opportunity to make the right choice in reestablishing a relationship with the northern tribe? The elders, the old advisors said, look, get along with them. Back off. Let's start over. Let's do this right. But the young advisor said, no, make it harder on them. The result was a catastrophic disaster. Okay? So here we have Ish being led by Isha. She took from the fruit and she gave it to her husband, and he did eat. And the eyes of them were both open, and they knew that they were naked. They knew that they were naked. They were naked before and they weren't freaking out about it. But now they realize they're naked. What relationship has it now affected?
Their relationship with Yah.
It has caused a problem to take place in that relationship. Because now they're exposed, but they don't, they were ashamed of the fact that they were naked. Okay? I'm kind of ashamed that I've done something, I feel guilty about it. Oh, look, there's a fig leaf. I'll just cover myself up and I'll be fine. What is a fig leaf? Why not choose a banana leaf? Because a fig leaf is a representation of wealth, prosperity. Everything's going to be okay. And what do they cover? They cover Ish and Isha. They cover their ability to communicate with Yahuwah Elohim. Okay? Because it goes on to say, and in 8, And they heard the voice of Yahuwah Elohim walking in the garden at the breeze of the day. King Jimmy says, oh, it was so cool that day. The word for breeze and the word for cool is actually ruach. That the spiritual aspect of Yahuwah was yom. Yes, it means day, but it also means perpetually present. Okay? It's not that all of a sudden they heard the voice of Yahuwah. It was always there. But now there's a ripple going through the spiritual realm. Okay? And now he comes through and he's moving amongst the garden. Yahuwah Elohim called unto the Adam and said, first question in the Torah, where are you? Question that we should ask ourselves when we allow Isha to overtake Ish, or when we allow Ish to bind Isha. Can Ish bind Isha? Can I overanalyze something to the point where I don't take any action at all?
Yes.
Is it good to not take any action at all when you should actually take action? It's not. Is it good to take action when you shouldn't take action? Because if Ish and Isha are out of balance, you're going to do things in the wrong way. So the question in the Torah, very good question, very educational question for all of us. Where are you? What is your state of being? And if I ask myself this question prior to reciting the Shema, then I have something to look at while I'm reciting the Shema. Because in the Shema, I'm asking myself, where am I? How do I need to change? Okay? All right. And he said, I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. The first time that we see the chet as a root of a word in Torah is in the word chebed, and it's in this verse. I hid myself. Actually, they heard the voice, it's actually in 8. They heard the voice, and the Adam and his wife hid themselves in the presence. But chebe, the first time we see the het, it's a root of a word in Torah. Chebe, het, is a Hebrew word that means to stray off course. When we look at het as a letter, we have two letters yoked together by what we could call a chuppah. Okay? In other words, the first choice in het is that me as the Vav, as humankind, I can yoke myself to Elohim by and through his word, and as a result receive Zion. Okay? Zion, the letter, is a pictograph of a sharp object. It means weapon. It comes from the root zan, that means to nourish. It's the 7th letter of the alphabet. That for us, if we consider 7, it represents rest for us. It represents our oath. Okay? So I can yoke myself to Elohim through his word and receive his nourishment, his rest. Time out. Cheers. Nothing like cold coffee. Okay. I can receive his nourishment, his protection, his rest. Or the other side of het is I can hide. The ancient Paleo-Hebrew pictograph of the het is the side of a tent, the wall. Okay? I can choose to stray off course and hide behind a wall and be hidden from Elohim. Okay? But they've sewn fig leaves on themselves. So they've obviously made the choice to separate themselves from Elohim. Okay? We heard your voice in the garden. We were afraid because we were naked, and I hid myself. And Elohim says, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you should not eat? Have you violated my Torah? Okay? I was naked and I was afraid. I was ashamed. I have built my own prosperity. I don't need your rules anymore. But I'm going to have this false feeling of guilt and tell you that I have a false feeling of guilt when I fully intend to not change anything that I've done. Anybody been there? I'm going to pray and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this goes contrary to what your word says, but I'm going to do it anyway because it'll make me feel better. I'm sure nobody's been there before. Yeah, we've never done that. Maybe? Okay. Hopefully I'm not the only one. All right. All right. Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you not to eat? So what should have been the answer right here?
Yes.
The correct answer right here would be 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people will call upon my name and humble themselves and confess what they've done, then I will hear them and I will forgive them and I will heal their land. Okay? The answer had been yes. Yes, we did. We are sorry. We realize what we're done because Ish and Isha is together. Ish knows better. Ish has taken the time to sit down, make teshuvah, pray about it. Isha has changed because Ish is now governing instead of Isha governing Ish. Isha is governing Isha. And what would have Elohim said? Okay, we made a mistake. Let's move forward and fix the mistake. Now, you have to go into detox because I was probably going to feed you just a little bit at a time from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because, I didn't want you to get sick, but you've been bad children and you brought home a pumpkin full of candy and you ate all of it at one time and now you have a bellyache. I wouldn't know anything about that. Okay? I wouldn't know anything about eating that last bite of the really, really big steak that I know better. But I do it anyway because it's good. But that doesn't happen. The result is this. And Ish said, Isha, whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I did eat. No personal responsibility taken. Can I justify things? How do I justify things? Can I justify things in the spirit, in the physical? Can I justify my spiritual belief system physically? Can I point to you any scripture in the book and make it justify what I want to accomplish, whether it's right or wrong? So, he does this. Ish should be leading Isha. But he is going to use his doctrine to make sure that the Torah says what his doctrine says, or making sure that the Torah says what his doctrine says, instead of making sure that his doctrine is in line with the Torah. Everybody with me? Can I make my doctrine sound by manipulating the Torah to make it say what I want it to say? Happens all the time. Okay? Because I don't bother to read and I don't bother to understand. Yahusha told the Samaritan woman what? You've totally got a grasp on everything. You know exactly what you're doing. No. He said you worship what you don't know. You worship what you don't understand. We worship what we understand because deliverance comes from the Yahudim. Is he saying, well, no, the Jews are all that in a bag of potato chips. You should become Jewish. No, he's saying that deliverance comes from those who are in line with the Torah. Okay? Because I'm telling you that the day is going to come that neither on this mountain or in Jerusalem are you going to worship. It doesn't make a difference whether you're a Christian or a Jew. Both of your doctrines are messed up. You're worshiping what you don't know. You need to get back to what the word of Elohim actually says and then begin to apply that in your life. Okay? Then Elohim says to the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me and I did eat. That is true. That is an absolute true statement. Isha allowed herself to be manipulated by her emotions, and the result was she made the wrong choice in Tet and led the physical aspect into it as well. So what happens? Yahuwah Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, now listen to this, because you have done this, cursed are you from among all the cattle and among all the beasts of the field. We'll start with that. Why is he comparing them to cattle and beasts of the field? Why doesn't he compare them to salamanders and frogs and, well, those are amphibians. Why doesn't he compare them to lizards and other things? Because you have done this, the wrong choice in Tet will lead to a state of spiritual poverty. It's telling us, okay? And you will go, and you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. If you make the wrong choice in Tet, you will become spiritually poor, and you will only seek after the things that are temporary and will never last. Okay? So if we allow Isha to lead Ish, then what happens? If we allow Isha, who has been manipulated emotionally, to lead Ish, then anything that Ish accomplishes will simply be temporary. It will never last because the roles have been reversed. Then it says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, because your seed and her seed. Okay, so I'm going to put a division. I'm going to put strife. I'm going to put a mental battling between making the right choice in Tet and your spirit. Your spirit is now going to be conflicted. And he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. What is it going to affect? It's going to affect not only the way we think, but it's going to affect the way we walk. Right? Okay.
Can I ask if I'm understanding this, there's an Ish and an Isha inside all of us. You're not just talking
All of us.
about women and men. You're talking about the Ish and Isha in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they battle.
Right.
The Ish and the Isha battle inside me just as much as they battle.
You know, let's get something clear about the Adam. The Adam, as a word, means humankind. Okay? Religion as a whole has made all of this chauvinistic.
Yes.
Elohim is no respecter of persons. Okay? Now, men and women is, let's just say, as married couples, have roles. And the roles are there that the woman supports the man covers and takes care of the woman. The man cannot cover and take care of the woman if he's not being taken care of. Mm-hmm. Trina tells me all the time, I don't do anything around here, I feel so bad. I said, how do you feel bad? You take care of me so I can go to work to take care of you. I mean, there's, you know, it's a circle. The circle of life. Okay? All right. But yes, all of us are Adam. All of us are Adam. All of us contain Ish, the ability to think, be emotional, develop a spiritual bond to Elohim, and we are, or Ish, the ability to physically research, to physically go to the Word, physically read the newspaper and discern whether this is true or not. And we are all able to bring Isha out of us because it is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. Okay? We are one thing. And we can bring forth the right spirit or the wrong spirit. We can make the right choice or the wrong choice. Depends on what we look at as Ish. So men and women, there's no distinction in the Adam. Adam's family. Doodle-doom. Okay. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your pain and your pregnancy. In pain you shall bring forth children, and your desire to be with your desire shall be to your husband. Okay, so we look at this as childbirth. Most animals, I don't know, I've never seen a whole lot of animal births, but most animals don't really flinch when they have. I watched an elephant give birth to a baby elephant. It was like, oh, look at there. There it is, you know. I've sat in the delivery, you know, the delivery of 5 of my kids, And it's not like that. No.
It is not.
So we look at this physically. But if we look at this, to the woman he says, I will greatly multiply your pain in your pregnancy, and in pain you shall bring forth children, and in pain you will bring forth children. How does our spirit act when it's not supported? Can our emotions go off to the point where it brings forth fruit, or tries to bring forth fruit, struggles to be fruitful, and it's very painful to bring things through if you don't take any time to read about it and understand what you're doing? But there's a remedy to that in this verse. Your desire shall be to your Ish, and he shall exercise dominion over you. What is Elohim telling Isha? In order to fix this, you need to allow Ish to rule over you. In other words, not rule over you, but you need to allow Ish to lead you. Okay? You can't do this by yourself, Isha. You can't allow your emotions to go off half-cocked and eat from stuff I told you not to eat from. You're going to have to listen to Ish. You cannot tell Ish what to do. Okay? So the Rolling Stones are wrong here. It cannot be under my thumb. This is why in the scripture, when Paul is saying, women, be in submission to your husbands. Everybody's saying, under my thumb. No. It's using the word ana, saying, women, dedicate yourselves to the care of your husbands. And then husbands, love your wives as Mashiach loved the congregation. How did Mashiach love to the congregation? To the point of what? In other words, if you take on that woman, you need to be willing to give yourself fully to the point of death to take care of her. And if he's willing to do that for you, then you need to dedicate yourself to making sure that he can kill himself taking care of you. Somehow that came out wrong, but you know what I'm saying. I used to ask young people, why are you getting married? I said, we're in love. I said, well, of all the stupid reasons to get married, can you work together? If he leaves the toilet seat up with urine running down it, how are you going to feel about that? Are you going to be able to talk to him and train him to not do that? Because that's what it's all about, is being able to work with each other and help each other to see things and see things about ourselves. Don't get married because you're in love. That'll come later when you're retired. And you can take those long cruises. And ladies, you can leave your husband in the cabin to take a long nap while you go and enjoy yourselves. Because men are boring. I didn't say that out loud. I'm sure you're not. You're not either. Yes?
I was thinking on that the other day.
She was thinking that men are boring. I got you. Okay. The other day. Okay.
Every day I was thinking on this, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I see that, what you're saying, and I also saw it, and that the perception or the ability to follow the truth of the Torah and live that life and walk that walk could eventually lead us to death, to the cross, because we're going to stand up and we're going to continue to walk that walk of Mashiach, of following that truth. And so it could lead to death on a cross, or death in a jail, death, persecution.
Yeah.
Or even death by someone else.
And that's true. I mean, do people get upset with you because you believe what you believe?
Right.
People do.
Can you make someone?
You know.
Can we make someone?
This is a terrible thing to say. In the midst of persecution, they're going to persecute you because of your belief in Jesus and that you love the Lord God. It's an advantage that you all have, is that you don't necessarily have to believe in Jesus, and you don't have to necessarily want to follow the Lord God. But nobody's going to ask you. You need to give up your relationship with Yahusha. I can keep that in my head, that I have a relationship with Yahusha. I don't necessarily have a relationship with Iosus. I don't have a relationship with Eos, the deity of fertility. I don't have a relationship with Zeus, the god of the sky. Okay? Maybe surviving torture 101 here. I don't have to necessarily have a relationship with the Lord, a Roman fertility deity that was in everyone's home. And I don't necessarily have to have a relationship with God, who was the Teutonic deity of the sky. But not everybody's going to ask me, are you willing to give up your relationship with Yahuwah Elohim? So, you know, but you're right. You're right. The time will come eventually when there will be persecution for exactly that. That's why you carry your cross every day. What do I mean by that? You carry with you the Tav every day. The Tav is simply the covenant marker. You carry the covenant with you every day. And you remember that you're in a covenant relationship every day. And your covenant relationship will help you get through a lot of things. But your role of Ish and Isha have to be in the right position. Okay? All right, let's go to the next page because it gets interesting. To the Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your Isha and have eaten from the tree which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it. Okay, that's an interesting thing. You've listened to your Isha, and you've not listened to the command which I gave you, saying, you shall not eat of it. So Isha's responsibility was to what? Physically understand the commandment so that Isha could be kept in line with the truth. I am not going to worship in spirit and emotion. I worship in spirit, I worship in spirit and in truth. So I'm not going to worship in emotion and truth. I have to worship in spirit and in truth. They have to be in line. But listen to this. You shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil shall you eat of it all the days of your life. Okay. So what is it? Is it the ground? Is it the ground? Let's look at that. You shall, because you listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for your sake. Semicolon. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Is he going to eat from the ground all the days of his life, or is he going to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil all the day of his life? Okay? So, cursed is the ground. The word that is used for ground here is hadamah, that is the root of the word Adam. So what is cursed? What is delegated to have hardships the rest of his life? His life. His life will be messed up because you chose to listen to your emotions instead of paying attention to the word. And because you've done this, your life is messed up. And from here on out, if you don't fix it, which you've shown me you're not going to fix it because you depend on your girdles of fig leaves over answering my question and making teshuvah, then you will eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil all the rest of your life.
So ground represents life, your field.
Yeah. What can you grow? So we look at Cain. Everybody wants to say, well, he was bringing fruit from the ground because the ground's cursed. No. Cain was saying, oh, look, I got a couple of pomegranates over there. I really don't feel like grabbing all this stuff up. Let's just check those. Yeah, it's got a spot on it. We can get that spot off and throw it in there. What did they bring to Elohim when they brought to him the first fruits of the harvest? The best. Cain was not willing to give the best. Anybody have an idea why Cain didn't give the best? Could it have anything to do with his name? Cain means the desire to get more stuff, the desire to acquire, the desire to have things. If I have a desire to have things and my life is focused on strictly on getting ahead and acquiring more things, is my life necessarily going to be concerned about offering Elohim the best part of myself at any given time? No. Was Havel any better? Havel brought the best of his flock and offered it. But Havel, it means vanity. Can I choose to bring the absolute best of what I have because I want to be so much better than someone else? So, two offshoots of who gave birth to these children. Hava. Okay? Life gives us two choices. In this particular case, it isn't until Cain kills off Abel that Seth can come around. And Seth means to replace. That it isn't until I get rid of my desire to have things and not really care what I give, or my desire to give the best so my vanity will be fed, that I realize that one must get rid of the other in order for something to come along that will replace them both. But that's for a different study.
And that's what he said would happen. They would have to eat of that.
Yeah.
Humanity has had to eat of that.
Tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do we
Eat of
depend?
that.
Do we depend on our relationship with Elohim more than we depend on our ability to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil?
Yes.
Okay. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil will just about always win out.
We're living it out.
Okay? I will have Cain and I will have Abel until I come to the point where I can get rid of my vanity. And when my vanity goes away, it gets replaced with something else. But listen to what it says. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. Thorns and thistles it will bring. Your desire to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil will yield thorns and thistles to you. Where was the Torah given? On Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, from the root sin, is basically a word that means thorns and thistles. That amongst the thorns and thistles is found the word of Elohim. But I have to have what? I have to have a desire to open the book and live according, not just read it, but influence Isha enough to live according to what it says. This is how special you were to Elohim. It says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth in the day that Yahuwah Elohim created the earth and the heavens. That you are so special that he was willing to put you first. Everywhere in the Torah, heavens will always come before earth. King Jimmy has it wrong when it says, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. No, I should say, let your will be done as it is in heaven, also on earth. But in this particular instance, he puts earth before heaven. And what does he do on that day that he created the earth and the heaven? He gathers some mud together, makes a little person, makes a spiritual container, and breathes into his nostrils the breath of life. He places a piece of himself within to bring them alive. And that person became a living tape recorder. He became a living soul. He became the carrier of the book of life. Because what is looked for in the book of life? We read in Revelation that there's a book of life up there in heaven. It's not up there in heaven. It's not in some otherworldly place. The book of life is within you. The soul that you carry around is the book of life. What are they going to look for in that book of life according to the book of Revelation? They're going to look at what you did with that life that you had. It's not going to look at whether you believed or didn't believe. It's going to deal with what you did according to that belief. So, does Ish and Isha have to be in unison in order for you to accurately write down what you have in that book. They do. But we have to be willing to see the thorns and the thistles before we can scrape out the word. Have you ever walked along a field where you thought, oh, it was perfectly fine, and all of a sudden you step on stickers? You didn't know they were there. It's like I tell people, in the safety orientation at work. Pay attention to where your feet are. Pay attention to where your hands are. Know where you are. Okay? Because if you don't, you're going to step on a nail, you're going to trip over something, and if you fall, your knees might get hurt, you might hurt your back, but your hands have to land somewhere. They're going to land on nails, they're going to land on screws, they're going to land on broken glass. It's the same thing in the Torah. Okay? What this is teaching us is that Isha cannot lead Ish. We cannot allow our emotions to lead our ability to make sense of things by looking at the world around us to understand why it is what it is, to understand where we are, and then to be able to correct our course when we go off course. How does this relate to, and that's the last question, how does this relate to the children of Israel? And how does this relate to two kingdoms? Because none of this would have happened if Rehoboam had been the right choice and responded the right way to Jeroboam. So the lesson here teaches us that we can cause great division in our life down the road. But it's also a lesson that shows us a foreshadowing of what would happen with the kingdom of Israel down the road. Any questions?
The trick is to determine in your own mind if you're being led by your emotions or by the word. I mean,
The trick.
You have to.
The trick.
You can figure it out, but
How do you figure it out?
we go to the word.
Go to the Word, or I can research news to find out if what I believe in the news, it doesn't all have to be about Torah things. But if I want to live right according to this, I have to be able to depend on this. I can't freak out and, Facebook's a prime example of all the garbage that you read on it, how much of it's true, how much of it's not true. How much of the news out there is real and how much of it's fake news. A lot of this stuff plays on your emotions more than it plays on truth.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'll still ask it.
Okay.
Yah breathed in the nostrils of Adam, the one that he took out of the six-day people, brought into the garden. Did he not breathe into the six-day people?
Didn't have to. He created them. They were alive and living. The question that we ask is, why did none of the people in the first aspect of creation survive the flood? Why did he kill them all?
That is a good question.
Because the only people that survived were prodigies of Adam. That's a question that came to my mind yesterday. So it tells us specifically the way we were formed, because we are all descendants
We're
of
all
Adam.
of Adam, yeah.
Okay,
'Cause
so
that's the story that lives on.
yeah, so the people of the land will still be descendants of Adam, but we have three sons of Noah. One of them created the people of, or two of them would create the people of the land. One of them would bring forth a nation that would be the prince to minister to the people of the land. So you have Japheth that became Europe, you have Ham that became the Middle East, and you have Shem that became the Hebrews.
Would it be,
That's what I thought.
would it be like you've always told us, or the Torah tells us, who, when he brought in the two, they were to minister to the rest of the world.
Right.
To the six-day
Yeah.
people. And of course, what have they got?
Yeah.
What happened?
It hasn't happened yet. I
They
mean,
never do it.
They, and because
well,
of
they
the
split.
fruit.
They split. you know,
So how
if you
can
will,
this-
if you will, okay, if you will hearken to my voice, if you will listen to my voice, and you will guard my covenant, I will make you a special treasure. Will make you my special treasure. And I will make you a nation of Kohanim. Basically, I will make you a nation of priests and ministers. And I will make you a holy nation. Again, there's no word for holy in Hebrew. I will make you a Kodesh nation. I will make you a nation that is set apart for a specific purpose. And then the understanding was, I'm going to give you the rules. You are to take those rules to the world. But they split. Yahusha came to accomplish 4 things. We've talked about it. To restore the covenant between Elohim and the house of Israel, the northern kingdom. To restore the value to the northern kingdom, the 30 shekels of silver. To shed or to kill off the last Levitical high priest. And to kill off the last physical king, so that there would be no more Levitical system. And the only king of the kingdom would be Yahuwah Elohim. Okay? And we could go back to, has anybody heard of this? The Book of the Covenant. If you haven't heard of the Book of the Covenant, very, very carefully read through the book of Exodus. Because the first thing that is given to Moses is the Book of the Covenant. Then the Book of the Covenant is repeated back to Moses when he's on the mount for 40 days. And the building of the tabernacle is given so that they can discuss the Book of the Covenant. But they're interrupted because the people have decided to build a golden calf. And Moses breaks the Book of the Covenant. And what it is replaced with is a book that contains the Levitical system and the Levitical priesthood. The Book of the Covenant is meant to be ministered to by the priesthood of Melchizedek. But now it's replaced by the priesthood of Levite. Priesthood of Levite has to come to an end so that, as Paul tells the Hebrews, he has become our high priest in the order of Melchizedek. 3,000 people die because of the golden calf thing. 3,000 people are restored when Peter goes out after the Ruach falls in the upper room. Priesthood of Melchizedek brings life. Priesthood of Levite brings death. I don't know if that answered the question, but it sounded pretty good. Alrighty?
I have a question, one more question.
Okay.
Where are we in our feasts and festivals now? Where are we?
We are in the sixth month wilderness, moving towards Pesach again.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Sukkot was in September-ish.
Yeah, that's right.
Alrighty? Yes. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. We split up Europe, Middle East, the Hebrews. Seems to be a purely Western mindset. Where do you guys come from?
Well, my Western mindset comes from
They all gather towards European and
Western mindset. Even the United States now, it's all European. But the Western mindset, the Greco-Roman mindset, is what we battle nowadays because that's how we think of things. We don't think of things from a more, well, we call it an Eastern mindset, you know. But the Torah says, don't think from an Eastern point of view. But we can't understand things from a Western point of view because everything has to be concrete in a Greco-Roman point of view. We deny the spirit in a Greco-Roman point of view. I don't know if that made any sense. I don't know if that answered the question.
where the Asians come in.
Huh?
Where the Asians come in.
Well, I think Asians would have come from probably a combination of both Japheth and Shem. but or Ham. But I think they would have been more Hamish than they would have been anything else. You know.
It never seems to be mentioned.
Well, they say that they settled in Shinar towards the east. So where is Asia? Is it in the west or is it in the east? Okay. Well, we usually tend to call it the Far East from our point of view. So I think it's the speculation. The Asian people would have come from Ham, which is interesting because they don't eat ham. They eat a lot of fish and stuff. Although pork is big on a lot of Asian places. Anyway, that would be my guess. You get three groupings of people.
Yeah, we had to recognize it as historical people that are spirit.
Mm-hmm.